Hello everyone, welcome back or welcome to Look Into My Life. My name is Angela. For those of you who are new here and don't know me, I like to make beauty, lifestyle, fitness, and girl talk videos. So you saw the title. We are going to be discussing Jeannie Mai and the rapper Jeezy. And I'm just going to give you all a little disclaimer. I do have a background in psychology, so sometimes on this channel I like to make little case studies and do a sort of psychological twist on current events, whatever's going on in the world, and see if we can learn from it. So that being said, this topic is going to be about when you are in love with an abuser. I have my notes and everything here, so I'm going to be looking down. But for those of you who do not know who Jeannie and Jeezy are, I am going to give you a brief summary. We're going to start with Jeezy. So Jeezy's real name, government name, is J. Wade Jenkins, and he is an Atlanta rapper. He grew up in, what you would call the street life, the thug life on the streets. Obviously, the man saw a lot, and he often describes his childhood as being empty. Now, he did manage to turn his life around and build up success as a rapper and explored other business ventures. However, he does have a criminal past, criminal history. His son reported him to the police for an incident in 2012. So there was some sort of domestic dispute. Allegedly, I have to say allegedly, but you can obviously see all of these documents online. Now, currently, he has children with, I think, about 3 different women, including Jeannie Mai, who was his wife, but they are now, of course, going through a divorce. Moving on to Jeannie Mai. So Jeannie Mai was raised by immigrant parents from Vietnam. She grew up in the Bay Area. She started her background in Hollywood, working in makeup, styling, fashion. That was her thing, and now she's a really successful TV host. She also had a troubled upbringing. Unfortunately, she experienced SA from, I believe it was a relative, and when she finally opened up to her mother about it, I think her mother didn't believe her. There was something there that estranged their relationship, and now they have rekindled and rebuilt their relationship and are on good terms, thankfully. So yeah, she has experienced that sort of abuse in the past, which is really unfortunate, really sad that that has happened to her. And also, it's important to acknowledge that Jeezy also had a sort of tense relationship with his mother as well. I think there was an incident where Jeezy's mother had threatened to delete him, and then later on Jeezy threatened to delete his son, allegedly. That sort of generational trauma was carried on from Jeezy with his mother to Jeezy, and then now his son, who is much older now. Alright, so as I've stated, Jeannie and Jeezy are currently in the middle of a divorce. After 2 years of marriage, they have a beautiful 1-year-old baby girl named Monaco. So yeah, it's come out amid their divorce and custody battle for their child that Jeannie is now accusing Jeezy of domestic violence and child neglect, and also has reminded the courts of the police proceeding against his sons. And Jeezy has now responded to these allegations by alleging that actually it was Jeannie that was the hot-tempered, abusive partner. It's a little bit of a mess. Really, none of this is our business, but of course, these situations kind of hit close to home. Like, especially if you've experienced something like this or witnessed something like this, it's one of those things where you're like, you know what, it's better that we talk about it, have these discussions, and kind of talk about why this happens, what to do if you're in a situation where you're in love with your abuser, and how to recognize it, how to move past it, how to heal. We are going to sort of break down what has been going on in the court proceedings with these people. So I don't have the exact details. I'm going to put up the sort of details of everything on the screen so you guys can follow along. But Jeannie Mai brought up 3 main incidents of domestic dispute between herself and Jeezy. And Jeannie Mai has alleged that Jeezy pushed her down the stairs at the Ritz-Carlton. There's actually a report filed by the Ritz-Carlton employees about this incident, so there is proof of this incident. She's also alleged that there was a situation where they were at some sort of party and Jeezy asked the driver to get out and he went ahead and assaulted her there. And she also has alleged that there was another incident with the golf carts and released pictures of that incident, suggesting that when he drinks recklessly, he endangers not just Jeannie but also himself. And following that, Jeannie Mai has also released some evidence that suggests that Jeezy is not securing his boom booms, his pew pews safely. So there is a picture circulating around and a video of Jeezy allegedly holding a pew pew, walking around the house holding the pew pew. Even though Jeannie did provide proof of these incidents and also called forth the marriage counselor and the pastor and other people to kind of sort of stand up as witnesses, Jeezy has still denied that these events occurred. And he's actually pushing back and saying that it was Jeannie who was the hot-tempered member in the family. I think there's a video going around where Jeannie was talking about the temper that she has. He suggested that Jeannie has actually assaulted him allegedly on multiple occasions. Jeezy has also suggested that Jeannie was flirting with other men in his presence. Yeah, so there's a lot going on here. Jeezy is alleging that Jeannie is only trying to smear his name in the public because he refused to have a second child with her, and has released text messages that suggest that Jeannie was desperate to have a second baby because Jeezy was threatening to file for divorce, and he told her that if this marriage does not improve, I am going to leave. And as a result, Jeannie went ahead and started the IVF cycle. And the reason why Jeezy brought this up was to sort of say, look, if I'm such a dangerous and toxic partner and parent, why would Jeannie want to have a second baby? We're gonna digest all of this and see what is going on. I'm gonna first start off by saying that two things can be true at the same time. Jeannie could be hot-tempered. She could be hot-tempered, but Jeezy could also be abusive. Those two things can exist and be true at the exact same time. It's also important to acknowledge that right now, Jeannie is the one that has a lot more of the evidence than Jeezy. I don't think Jeezy has really any evidence. So far, only Jeannie has the evidence to corroborate her side of the story. What do you do when you are in love with your abuser? What does this look like? Why did this dynamic get so sour so quickly? So to understand this, the first thing we have to do is we have to understand the cycle of abuse, and then we have to understand how the brain even works in love. Let's go over the cycle of abuse. It's actually a theory that was invented by Lenore E. Walker back in 1979. In this cycle of abuse, there are 4 main phases. So the phases are calm phase, tension building phase, incident phase, and reconciliation phase, which is also known as the honeymoon phase. And it just is a loop that keeps going until somebody decides to end the cycle. Okay, let's describe what the calm phase is. The calm phase is the stage in the relationship where everything's sort of fine, everything's normal, you're enjoying each other, it's just day-to-day Monday stuff. And then the tension building phase is actually the longest phase of this whole cycle, because you're sort of walking on eggshells. You don't want to trigger your partner, you sense that there's something sort of off, but you're trying not to trigger anything. So you're walking on eggshells, sort of teetering around every subject, until finally you hit the incident phase. And this is when the abuse happens. So this will either be being struck by a partner, or some sort of big incident happens, like being cheated on. Something happens there that is extremely abusive. But after the incident phase, the reconciliation phase, or the honeymoon phase, comes in. And in this sort of phase, there's a lot of apologies, there's excuses being brought up, like I only did this because I was stressed, I was this and that. There's just a lot going on, but in this phase you'll often see dates, gifts being brought. This phase also involves some love bombing, and for those of you who do not know what love bombing is, it's the action of lavishing someone with gifts and attention to manipulate them and to influence them. After that sort of big passionate reconciliation that occurs, there's usually a calm. So yeah, this cycle is extremely hard to break. This, coupled with being with a narcissistic partner, can be an extremely painful process to recognize and to break. The 4 stages of narcissistic abuse and the cycle of abuse are different. However, they overlap and they're a little bit similar, because not every abusive person is a narcissist, and also not every narcissist is going to be physically abusive. However, every narcissist is going to be abusive, but not in the same ways. When you're dealing with narcissistic abuse, there's also 4 main stages. There's the idealization phase, then there's the devaluation stage, the discard stage, and then the Hoover phase. Now this one doesn't always work in a cyclical manner. Sometimes it just happens just in stages that don't necessarily repeat themselves, but sometimes they do. So in the idealization phase, the narcissist is going to have you on a pedestal. You'll be like the greatest gift to them. They're going to be showering you with everything, attention, love bombing you, giving you gifts, telling you, you're their soulmate, the love of their life. Everything's going to be there. And then the devaluation stage starts, where they slowly start picking you apart, and you slowly start to feel insecure. You're questioning yourself, questioning the relationship. Maybe they start comparing you to other women. Maybe they say backhanded compliments. There's just something going on there that is making you feel like, what the heck? Like, I thought we were good. I want what we had before. I want the person that I met. I don't want this version that is making me feel horrible about myself. That's usually what happens in the devaluation stage. Now in the discard phase, this phase often includes some sort of abandonment. They were done, they got what they needed, bye. And then you have the Hoover phase, and this is when the narcissist just sort of wants to keep you around. They're keeping their eye on you so that if they want to come back and get more narcissistic supply from you, they can, and they will. So I say this so that we can all better understand why people don't leave. I've seen online people saying things like, You know, if Jeezy was so bad, if he was so toxic, why would Jeannie want a second baby with him? Why would he be the one that files for divorce? Why would Jeezy be the one that files for divorce? Now, this depends on Jeezy's personality type. You know, if you're dealing with somebody who has more of a narcissistic personality type, narcissists definitely discard you once they do not need anything from you anymore. They have what they needed. I got what I needed to, you know, push my career. I got the money. I got whatever I needed. I don't need you anymore. I'm happy to discard you. That can definitely happen in the cycle of narcissistic abuse. Sometimes when you're dealing with narcissistic abuse, they can definitely be the one to ask for the divorce or to file for divorce first. Sometimes it's a way to threaten or just manipulate you and say, you know, if you don't do this, I'm going to leave. Or just sort of have more control over you. That could also be something that's going on in the situation. Let me put in my speculations of why Jeannie would have wanted to have a second baby with Jeezy, despite the sort of abusive dynamic they had going on. And I think there was also a statement that came out. Jeannie was saying that she was devastated and blindsided and she really wanted her family back. Let's talk about why, if a woman is abused, she may feel that way. That may be a very normal response to have initially when you have been abandoned and discarded. The first and most important thing to remember is this: our brains are neuroplastic. Now, if you do not know what neuroplasticity is, it's basically our brain's ability to change based off of the experiences we've had. The neural networks that we have going on in our brain, they can change based off of a traumatic event or a really good event. This is a blessing and a curse, but it's just how we are designed, right? And we're also designed to be social creatures and social beings. So, you know, we crave to be in groups, we crave to be in partners and pairs, and our brain rewards us by producing more anti-anxiety neurotransmitters. We produce more dopamine. We sleep better when we are in relationships, when we're paired up, when we have really great friends and family around us. We are social beings and we need people. So when we are in love with somebody, you kind of become connected to that person. Your neurotransmitters sync up with this other person. So when we're feeling stressed or when we're feeling sick, just being with them, being with the person we love can make us feel better. Speaking with them, getting their support makes us feel better. It makes us calm down. It makes us feel better. There's actually this study done to show that pregnant women can endure more pain when their husband is there holding their hand. Because when we're releasing, you know, the oxytocin and we're releasing all of these feel-good hormones, we feel better. It's a painkiller. It's a stress reliever. It's exactly what we need to function and to get through life. It's totally normal and it's how we are designed. There is nothing you can do about it. There's no way you can shut it off or change this wiring that we have. And when we are in love with somebody, we are releasing high levels of dopamine, and dopamine activates those reward systems in our brain. It's what makes love feel so exciting and feel so good and passionate, and you're on a high, and it's really like you're on a drug. Cocaine has the same effects, alcohol has the same effects. You're just sort of in a more euphoric state. So when we hear that the person we love is walking away, they're walking away, they don't want to be with us anymore. When we experience a breakup or a heartbreak, it's like you've been taken off that drug. You've been taken off your drug and your painkiller is gone. And the only thing that is going to make us feel any better is being with that person again, is to see them, is to hold them, is to talk with them again, is to go back to being in that sort of honeymoon stage again. We just want for that so badly. And we want it even if it's bad for us. Our brain is just in survival mode. We are in a lot of pain and we know that our drug, our previous drug of choice, doesn't want to even be with us. They don't want to see us, right? Or we don't want to see them, whatever the case may be. This is the same mechanism that causes addiction. So essentially you're kind of addicted to that person in a way. However, the withdrawals sometimes are a little bit different than an actual drug, obviously. And this is why Jeannie would have maybe wanted a second baby with Jeezy. And this is why Jeannie probably was devastated and heartbroken at the end of the divorce. Even though she may have known that this is not the right person for her, that I shouldn't be in this relationship, it's still like, hey, my drug is gone. I don't have my painkiller anymore and I want it back despite it being bad for me. I want that drug of choice back. So if you are somebody that is going through the same thing and you're in this cycle and you're stuck in this cycle, just know that, one, it's normal. It's just how our brains work. And if we do not have the proper support systems to support us when an incident happens, when we are experiencing abuse or when we are going through that breakup, we are more vulnerable to go back to that person. If that person is our only source of these sort of oxytocins, these dopamines, these feel-good hormones, then we're more susceptible to go back. We're more susceptible to go back and to want to fix things. It's also important to recognize how powerful trauma bonds are. A lot of people don't really know what a trauma bond is. There's a lot of misinformation about what a trauma bond is. A lot of people think a trauma bond is when you are bonding with somebody based off of similar pains and hurts that you've been through. That is not what a trauma bond is. A trauma bond occurs during the cycle of abuse. And it happens because of a thing that behavioralist psychologists like to call intermittent reinforcement. And intermittent reinforcement is basically one of the mechanisms of operant conditioning discovered by B.F. Skinner, who is an American psychologist. He is a behavioralist. Operant conditioning is this process. Our own voluntary behaviors are modified based off of the rewards or the punishment that we get. And Skinner had actually discovered that one of the most powerful ways to sort of influence someone's behavior, how to get somebody addicted to the reward and the stimulus that they get from you, is through intermittent reinforcement. Intermittent reinforcement occurs when you have a sort of reward or some sort of positive stimulus being delivered to the object or the person inconsistently. So when something is being delivered inconsistently, this is what yields the greatest amount of effort from the subject. So for example, intermittent reinforcement is what we use to train our dogs, right? So for those of you who have dogs, know that when you are training your little puppy how to sit, you first start by giving it a treat every time it sits. I continue to consistently give this puppy a treat until I see that, okay, the puppy understands that when I say sit, I want it to sit down, and when it does that, it receives a reward from me for doing what I say. But how to solidify this sort of behavior in the dog is to start giving it a treat maybe every second or third time it sits. So you switch from giving it a treat every time it sits to giving your doggy a treat every second or third time that it sits. And before you know it, you have your dog sitting for anything. It sits when it wants attention from you. It sits when it wants anything from you. Those of you who have dogs know that even if it doesn't know what's in your hand, that dog is going to sit in the hopes that maybe it will get a treat, because it's learned that when I sit, I get a treat. So maybe if I sit longer, then I'm going to get more treats. Maybe if I sit harder, I'll be given the treat, because it doesn't know when to expect the reward. And when something is delivered inconsistently like that, this is what makes people sort of addicted to the reward, and this is what creates a trauma bond. So when you're in a relationship with an abusive partner and they are loving on you 1 second, you're getting all that reward, all that positive attention and affection, and the next, it's cold. It's cold. You don't know when you're going to get your next hug from them, and then they go back to loving you, and giving you everything that you wanted and needed from them, and then it goes cold again. And they do this inconsistently. So now you as the subject, you as the person, you are going to do whatever it takes. Maybe you're going to start trying to make him his dinners earlier, or do whatever it takes to get that sort of goodness and that juiciness from him again, because it feels so good when he's good to you. When he's bad to you, you just want him to go back to being the good version again. The trauma bond occurs when you have that sort of inconsistent hot and cold. He's good, then he's not. He's good, then he's not. And you essentially get attached, super attached to your abuser, where you're almost willing to yield to whatever demands they have, as long as it means that they're going to be good to you again, as long as it means that they're going to give you that sort of affection again. In my humble opinion, in my psychoanalysis, that's really what I think was going on here with the Jeannie Mai and Jeezy situation. I think that there's definitely a cycle of abuse that occurred, and because Jeannie and Jeezy had formed a trauma bond, it made it really hard to leave the relationship. So when Jeezy pulled the plug, Jeannie was devastated. Her oxytocin, her dopamine, her antidepressant, her anxiety reliever, her stress reliever was gone. So of course you're going to go into this sort of spiral where you're like, I want this man back, even though he might not be good for me. And when the people we love hurt us, it's very hard for us to accept that. It's very hard for us to accept that we love somebody and they are just treating us horrible. Like, that's really hard to accept. And it actually turns out that when the people we love treat us badly, we don't stop loving them. We stop loving ourselves. We start questioning ourselves. We start questioning our own worth, if we're good enough. And it really erodes at our confidence. It erodes at our self-esteem, our self-worth. And this is even worse if the individual grew up in some sort of abusive dynamic or abusive home where they're kind of used to this cycle. And when you're used to this cycle and used to having tension with people all the time, especially your close circle, your mother, your father, your siblings, when you're used to having that, that's what feels comfortable to us. In our brains, we seek out comfort. We seek out what's familiar. And we sort of seek out to resolve our daddy issues, our mommy issues, whatever trauma we had. We seek out to resolve that in the partners that we look for. And so sometimes if you're an individual that has grown up in this sort of abusive home, you find yourself with an abusive partner too. And you find yourself in the sort of relationships that you're trying to get away from. So yeah, it can be tough. It can be tough to leave. It can be tough to walk away, especially when there's such a huge stigma around being in abusive relationships. I mean, sometimes the person who's abused still loves their abuser so much. Normal response, by the way. So how can we step away from the situation? How how do we exit? Now that we know how to recognize it, how do we leave? How do we walk away? All right, so the very first thing to do is to make sure you have a good support system around you. And this can be difficult because sometimes when we end up in abusive dynamics, the partner would have already isolated us from a lot of our friends or family. So if you are able to sort of reach out to those people, again, that would be a great start. If not, then reach out to a therapist, get some friends, get some people. I know there are shelters out there, but to be very and fully honest, you cannot get through this alone. You're not going to get through it alone. I mean, you can get through it alone, but you do not have to punish yourself like that. It'll be way easier to reach out and get the supports, get a therapist, get your family involved. If you don't have a good family to go back to, get some really good friends, go to a shelter. There are resources out there, and there are people to sort of help you pick yourself back up again. So you want to make sure you have a plan in place, because sometimes, you know, kids are involved, sometimes money is intertwined, sometimes this person was the breadwinner of the house, and if you leave, you're homeless, right? So make sure you have a sort of plan there in place. And this is why it's also good, ladies, like even if you're wanting to be a stay-at-home mother, always good to still have your own thing, your own money, your own sort of stuff, because in the event, it's good to, God forbid, but in the event an incident happens, you don't want money to be the reason you have to stay, right? So you want to make sure you have your own money in place so that you can take care of yourself, and you can also take care of children if the children are involved. Also continue to get support. You know, if you're really dealing with somebody who has some sort of personality issue, narcissistic personality disorder, an individual that is just extremely toxic, chances are they're going to try to love bomb you again, come back into your life again. They're going to do and promise anything and everything to be with you again. And if they don't do that, then they're definitely going to be, you know, icing you out, manipulating people around you, maybe getting people to turn against you. They're going to be, you know, smearing your name, whatever they can do to sort of get one leg up, to get you back, get revenge, whatever the case may be. So you want to make sure that you continue to get the support. Continue to get the support. If there's no one, hey, I mean, I'm pretty open. I can talk about anything. Yeah, if you want to leave me a comment. I know that this community is full of really kind, sweet, you know, supportive, empowered women. So if you leave a comment and you're somebody who's needing help or anything, or just wanting to talk, definitely reach out to, literally just send me a comment. I'm totally open to responding and to just chatting, but definitely get professional help. Get professional help, get people that can be there with you physically and literally hold your hand through the process, because we need it and we need each other. So yeah, that is pretty much all for this video. If you made it this far, I'm so thankful and grateful for you watching. And if you do like these sort of case studies, psychology videos, then I will definitely continue to do more. I am planning on starting my master's soon. So yeah, I definitely will be doing more and more and more and more of these. Yeah. All right, so that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye.